This week on Motor Week, Ginny Buckley takes a look at Toyota's new Celica at its international launch. Richard Hammond tests out 4 very different caddies in France. Ian Royle puts Ford's new-look Fiesta through its paces. And Chris Goffey looks at the Rover 400's replacement, the 45.
There's an old phrase that goes, "All roads lead to Rome," which is perhaps why Toyota have chosen to launch the latest version of the Celica here. Coupes are one of the most stylish types of automotive fashion. Every girl should have one in her wardrobe. They offer a great blend of performance and good looks that guarantee them a place on the catwalk. But some models, like Toyota's Celica, are looking less chic designer label and more high street fashion in need of an update. Enter a swanky Californian design studio, some inspiration from American muscle cars, and hey presto, this season's model is on the catwalk. The Celica started life back in that decade that taste forgot, the 70s. Thankfully, it's moved with the times. This is the 7th generation and it's the best looking version in years. The whole look is very American. The styling of the Celica Coupe is down to a technique called cab forward. Now, basically, this means that the character of the car takes its inspiration from the open-wheel race cars. The bold lines emphasise performance, the wheelbase is extended, with the overall length to create a wheel at each corner approach, similar to that of a real racer. It's also shorter than the previous models, which helps to enhance the sporting style. Inside, well, to be honest, it's a bit of a disappointment, really. It might be comfortable and it might have the levels of equipment that you expect of a car in this class, but stylish it certainly isn't. It's a kind of hodgepodge of angles and different shapes. There is far too much of John Major's favourite colour and a complete overload of plastic. And although there is enough room for me as the driver and for the front seat passenger, unless you're planning on carrying children in the back seats, you can forget it. If you're considering getting a Celica, you should have a good, long think about exactly what you want it for. You can't really take all the kids and the pet dog camping in this. And even though it has a strong rally tradition, it isn't an out-and-out sports car. It's probably best described as a sports tourer. You're not going to get out-and-out white-knuckle ride excitement, but you'll strike a conservative balance between sports handling and a comfortable, smooth ride. This is the 1.8-litre 16-valve engine. Believe me, it doesn't feel like a 1.8. It has plenty of kick and a very smooth delivery. The 140 brake horsepowers make this a much quicker car than the old model. You're not going to reach excessive speeds, but the engine really does feel very refined. The handling is agile and responsive, and because of the low stance, you feel extremely involved in the drive. The 6-speed gearbox is very snappy, and this adds to the appeal. This really is a very eager car. It seems to want to show you what it can do. The Celica is fantastic fun on open roads, but it's a bit too enthusiastic if you get stuck in traffic in the city, which happens an awful lot in Rome. Now, the Toyota may not have the flair of the Fiat Coupe or the out-and-out aggression of the Ford Kuga, but instead it offers a good value for money package that combines great looks with performance. And after all, that's just what you want in a coupe. You can get your hands on the 1.8 standard model for an on-the-road price of £19,255. That's cheaper than both the Kuga and the Fiat. The Toyota Celica is a stunning-looking vehicle. It's full of distinctive, sharp angles with a very potent chassis. My only criticism is that in terms of performance, it is a slight underachiever. Still, you can take comfort in the fact that it looks the part. And darlings, in the world of fashion, that's what counts.
If that sword from the Renault ad is anything to go by and size really does matter, then she should cop a load of this. Because we've brought a handful of big Americans to France, obviously, to find out if bigger really is better. So take your pick and prepare to go large. If you've always fancied a little sports car, then we'll try one of these for you. A Chevy Corvette, a really great big sports car. If you always fancy being pampered, well, don't mess around with tiddly little Beamers and the like. Go large and try a Cadillac Seville. For lovers of the four-wheel drive or trading your tiddly little Suzuki Jeep for one of these, a Chevy Blazer. And if you want more car than you ever thought you'd get for your money, we'll try out one of these, a Chevy Camaro. The Corvette is in fact the world's best-selling sports car, which must say something good about it, and it's now available over here. Well, not over here, this is France, over there, as in the UK, as opposed to the US, well, you know what I mean. Anyway, I've got cruising to do, so I can't sit around and chat. Got to look good on the streets. Oh my God! This thing's enormous! So, what was that bloke formerly known as Prince going on about when he sang Little Red Corvette? There is nothing little about this car, it's enormous. Even the figures are huge. It's a V8, 5.7 litre, 343 brake horsepower. The only small figure, in fact, is the 0 to 60. This whole thing will dash from 0 to 60 in about 5.2 seconds, which is ridiculous. But it does mean, above all else, I want to be in the movies. It isn't all about brute force though, there is some sophistication at work here. Not only do I have a very elaborate traction control system, which is probably just as well, I've even got a head-up display to tell me on the windscreen my RPM, kilometres an hour, and my oil temperature. It is only available in the UK in left-hand drive, and it's not cheap. Expect to pay between £40,000 and £45,000 for your Corvette, depending upon the specification. There's one market where I can see that big really is best. Corporate fat cats, ever eager to flash a bigger checkbook, company jet and cholesterol count than their competitors. Now, you don't see them praising a car for its compact dimensions, do you? What we want here is big, big and comfy. And the Cadillac Seville is both of those things. If, as I'm chatting away here, I get an oddly sort of glazed look on my face, that's because I'm having my bottom massaged. Well, not exactly. The seat is adapting to my own personal shape as we go along, which means both the seat pad cushion and the one behind me, they move and compress, and it's quite an unnerving sensation. And that really sums this car up. For the corporate fat cat who likes being pampered, you can't get any more pampered than here. They killed an entire field full of cows and spread their skin all over the inside of this thing. Every conceivable thing is electronically adjustable. Seats, steering wheel, the lot. This is a very, very big, comfy car. Prices for the Seville start at a shade under £40,000, but that list of specification goes on and on. It sounds like something from the Generation game. You get a CD auto changer, air conditioning, obviously, even a television and clever gizmos to help you park. And that's not all. Cadillac have another little trick up their sleeve that they hope will interest you. Dark, isn't it? Far too dark for filming, obviously, and too dark for driving as well. Unless you've got some of these. Headlights. Handy things, of course. They do make it an awful lot easier to see and to drive. That is until anything that's in them starts to get a little bit too far away. Then it can all get rather tricky. There's a novel solution. Look! I'm an amorphous white blob, which might not seem very impressive, but it's important because I am an amorphous white blob that you can see. Because this is night vision. And we're going to try it. It was developed by Cadillac together with the company that actually developed it for use in combat, and it really is night vision, the proper thing, infrared and all of that. It's fitted here to a DeVille, which is, I should say, very much a full-size American car, and it is in production in America. This isn't pie in the sky, it's real. There's a camera lodged behind the middle of the grille in front of the radiator at the front of the car. And it picks up, obviously, infrared light from objects in front of us, and it actually projects an image up onto the windscreen in front of me. It's head-up display. The effect is that I can see probably 5 times further than I can see in my own headlamps, which has huge safety implications. Obviously, they're extraordinarily pleased with this. It's in production in America, but I guess we will see it, and they're certainly confident that we will see it in Europe eventually. The surprising thing is that as an optional extra in America on Cadillac, it costs about $2,000, which really isn't a huge amount of money. And that really is an amazing piece of technology. And as I stare at it now, I can see people running across the road that I genuinely cannot see in the lamps. It works. The Americans invented the concept of the off-roader with the original Jeep, but back then in the war it was really rather a puny little thing. It had to be because of the original design criteria that it must be possible for 4 men to carry it in the battlefield. But nowadays, in common with overdrafts and crime figures, off-roaders have got bigger. This, the Chevy Blazer, is one of America's best-selling 4x4s, and we can now get it in the UK in right-hand drive. It's funny, but despite that first original American Jeep being a very genuine, back-to-basics, roughy-tufty off-roader, modern-day American off-roaders are more on-roaders. They're openly suburban vehicles. Some of them are even called suburban. The Chevy Blazer is no exception. It's big and comfy, great for cruising, taking the kids to school and back. Having said that it's comfortable and actually quite highly specified, which it is, don't expect to be necessarily pampered. The standard of fit and finish and the quality of the materials is not perhaps what we're used to from a European manufacturer. The Blazer starts at around £23,000, but 95% of customers in the UK opt for the leather and automatic version, which adds up to around £25,000. While we Brits were squeezing our stiff upper lips into the Healey Sprite, the MG Midget and the Triumph Spitfire, the Yanks were wedging their hamburger butts into cars so capacious and powerful you needed an oil tanker captain's licence to take them off the forecourt. Muscle power was in, and it still is to a degree. This is the Camaro. You can buy one of these in the UK and they start for less than £20,000, which means you get about a yard of car for every quid you spend. I'm off for a burger. Don't expect the big Camaro to exert a vice-like grip on the road, though. It was designed for a country with hundreds of miles of roads, all with less bends than a set square factory. It would be very easy as you drive the Camaro to start criticising it for being not as well put together as, say, an Audi. But you have to keep reminding yourself, 20-something grand, just 20-something grand. There's no money for a lot of car. OK, I've got to come right out and say it. I just love big old lazy American sports cars. I loved the Dukes of Hazzard, I loved Smokey and the Bandit, and I want their cars. I'd also like to be able to jump a 600-foot ravine in their cars, when in fact they'd break in half if you drop them from more than a foot off the ground, but I probably never will. If there's one thing all these cars have in common, the Corvette, the Camaro, the Seville and the Blazer, it's huge grin potential.
Coming up after the break, Ian Royle tests Ford's new-look Fiesta at its launch, and Chris Goffey tests the Rover 400's replacement, the 45.
Faced with fierce competition from its small car rivals, Ford have decided it's time to freshen up the Fiesta and give it, well, a slightly new look for the millennium, but without taking away the basic characteristics of the car. Now, with the new kids on the block, the likes of the Toyota Yaris, the Fiat Punto, which is already outselling the Fiesta in parts of Europe, and the Renault Clio, Ford have given the Fiesta its house style. Yes, it gets new edge design styling. If you're mystified as to why the new Fiesta didn't get the 1.7 engine instead of the 1.6 engine, well, it's because Ford didn't want the Fiesta treading on the toes of the Puma. You see, the 1.4 Puma has 88 brake horsepower, the 1.7 125, and this new S engine kind of fits nicely in the middle with 103 brake horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in just over 10 seconds and a top speed of 113 miles an hour. Revisions inside the Fiesta are quite frankly very minor. In fact, looking at this now, you can see very little difference from the outgoing model. But it does look a bit better, and it's very well put together and very well built, with a look of the Puma inside, but just doesn't have the je ne sais quoi and the style of the Renault Clio interior. There's also the option of head and chest side airbags, which is apparently a first for a car of this size. One thing it doesn't have, which is very annoying, is a switch inside the car to open the boot. You always have to use the key, and that really gets on your nerves. At the front end of the car, well, as you can see, it's been given Ford's new Edge design headlights. It gets a new bonnet, new wings and new bumpers. It's almost like the Fiesta's gone into a hairdresser's and asked for a new Edge design perm, and it's gone slightly wrong. And at the back, well, again, very little has changed. It gets this cheap fuel flap, which looks like it's going to fall off, an extra spoiler, and it seems to have grown some bulby bits, which look like a pair of breasts at some angles. I thought new Edge design was all about sharp, angly points. That certainly isn't. The new Fiesta lineup now consists of the 1.25 and 1.4 Zetec engines, plus the base 1.3 Endura E and 1.8 litre diesel. You can choose from 5 trim levels: Encore, Finesse, Zetec, LX and Gear, plus the new S. Amazingly, prices have slightly increased, with the base 1.3 Encore at £7,750, rising to the 1.4 Gear at £11,850. The Zetec S price has not been announced, but expected to be somewhere around £12,500. Now, if you're in the market for a small car, well, there are lots to choose from. They're all very different, but all very competent. So have Ford hit the right note with the new Fiesta? Well, it's more a revamp than anything else in response to the likes of the new Clio and the new Fiat Punto. The Fiesta has always been a very entertaining car to drive, and still is. It's probably the best of the bunch for that, despite having any real potent engines in the range apart from the new 1.6 Zetec S. I think you'll either love or hate the new Fiesta. I personally like it. Or you'll take so long to make up your mind over whether you like the car that you'll buy something completely different.
Ever since the days when the then British Leyland started an initially half-hearted association with Honda to produce the Triumph Acclaim in the late 70s, there's been a strong Japanese influence on their mid-range cars. Now, despite the purchase of Rover by BMW and the severing of ties between Honda and Rover, there's still a very strong Oriental influence on this, the new Rover 45. Now, it's billed as a new car to fit in between the 25 and the top of the range 75, but in fact it's just a facelift of the old 400 series model. That came out in 1995. It was a joint association between Honda and Rover. Honda built their car in Swindon and called it the Civic. Rover built theirs in Longbridge and called it the 420 and the 416. So what's new? Well, obviously a new smiley face, new headlamps, a new grille to reflect Rover 75 style, new bumpers and chrome trim and new wheels. Under the bonnet, 5 engine options, 3 of them new to this car. At the top end there's a new 2-litre V6 taken from the 75 model range. There's the 1.8 K series, a well-proven engine, and a new L series 2-litre turbo diesel. The 1.4 and the 1.6 engines are carried over from the old car. Suspension's been stiffened up to take the weight of the V6, and Rover claim ride and handling has improved as a result. Transmissions include a 5-speed manual, a 6-speed CVT and a 5-speed Steptronic automatic for the V6, again derived from the 75. The trouble with the old car was that Rover pitched it too high in the marketplace. They targeted and priced it well above the Escorts and Astras that it should have been competing against. And as a result, it looked expensive and not enough people bought it. Now with the new range of 75, 45 and 25, well, they've confronted reality. The 25 is pitched hard up against the sort of Polo Fiesta competition it should be facing, and this car is going to be priced hard against the Focus and Astra. As anyone who watches the registrations will know, this plan had better work. So far in 1999, Rover haven't got one car in the top 10, and this from the company who in the 1100, 1300 days used to take 30% of the market with one model. Sales this year are 30% down on the equivalent period in 1998. If this rebadging exercise doesn't work, BMW are going to be deeply displeased.
From the Mercedes-Benz S-Class to Volkswagen's Bora, Peugeot's 206 to the next generation town cars, satellite navigation is becoming more and more common on options lists. And just like 5-speed boxes and fuel injection, sat-navs will become standard as the technology becomes cheaper. So how do these magical systems work? Well, there are variations between the various manufacturers, but generally they follow the same basic principles. GPS, or Global Positioning Satellites, were originally developed for the military, but the technology now allows receivers in your car to calculate its position. Gyroscopes and various other sensors work out your speed and relay that information to the onboard computer. Maps are stored on CDs, and with time are mapping ever more areas in ever more detail. And as the technology is developed still further, greater accuracy will come.